Welcome to the season finale of the Aiming Five Hole podcast. Ryan, can you believe it's that point of the season? We're into the heart of the summer, and we're about done.
Yeah, well, look, I can believe it. It's been over 90 degrees in my neighborhood the last few days. So,
Well over 100 degrees here in Florida with the humidity. It's
oh,
crazy.
Lord, Lord, Lord. Yeah, it was look, we had a phenomenal conversation, wide-ranging conversation around the trades, around the draft and the draft itself.
And it's been a
Um,
wild,
it's been a wild ride. It's
wild
been a
ride.
wild
The last
ride.
week has been a little quiet, but
Yeah.
that free agency was a lot of players changing teams, a lot of low-end players changing teams, a couple high-end players, but they were sort of traded then signed,
Yeah.
rights traded away. But it was a bit of it was as with the free agency names being not the greatest year, what we thought was going to happen happened. A lot of big names traded teams through trades of signing rights
Hmm.
being traded, restricted free agents rights or free agent rights being traded before July 1st with a chance to sign sort of happened. And it's been a wild ride. And then lo and behold, you've been talking about it for a while, offer sheets, and it
Yeah, and
happened
then
with
yeah,
a
and then
bang.
Danny Briere decided to just destroy the league's its salary structure
Wow.
in
Wow.
one day.
Carlson getting an offer sheet for $90 million, 18 per, has now become, and he's obviously Anaheim had no choice but to sign that sucker and keep him.
Well, they had a choice. It
They
just
had a
wasn't a
choice,
good
but
choice.
but here's the problem, and this was talked about widely by all the experts, is that Philadelphia, if you put Carlson in that lineup, last year they were a playoff team. They're going to be a playoff team with Carlson on the team and probably a top 10, 12 team. Let's just even say they're in the top
But
12. I mean,
let's just say you're
you're looking
looking
at
at
an 18th
four first
overall.
round draft picks in the 20s.
Right. And that's not, you're not going to get a Leo Carlson by by doing that. So fourth
Yeah.
first round draft choices, you're just you're going to have to strike gold to get Leo Carlson. You're not getting him for 4 or 5 years, right? Player that you draft in the 20s probably ain't coming to the league for a couple of years after you draft him.
Right.
So
Right.
they had no choice. But this throws, I feel bad for Babrik, but I also think he mishandled the negotiation. They weren't that far away. He wanted 11 or 12. If you
He
listen
blew
to the
it.
rumors,
He
he was willing to
blew it.
take 15, and Briere had to blow it out of the water, a chance to try and call their bluff. So he blew it, right? And
Yeah.
and now Cutter Gauthier is going, hold on a second. I wanted 10 or 11. Now I want 15. And it's
Yeah.
throwing the team's salary structure out of whack. And by the way, they've had three big defensemen walk this summer: Druba, Carlson, and Gudis, all gone. They still have to sign somebody
Yeah.
on the back end to
Two
shore up that back
important,
end. Three important.
two important defensemen, and one physically large defenseman.
Yes.
Gudis is not more than a 13, 14 minute a night guy
No, I get
anymore.
that, but he's still reliably defensively. He's not going to add to anything to the offensive
Uh,
zone. He's going to cut, he's going to kill penalties. He's Look at all the three guys who's had the most hits in the last 3 years of the league are now on Florida Panthers. Hathaway, Gudis, and Kachuk. Brady, that
yeah.
is, are all on the Florida
Yes.
Panthers. But let's put that aside for a second. But go back to
No, not for a second. I don't want to talk about the Florida Panthers at all this
okay.
week.
There we
I'm
go.
not. I want to
Let's
go into the off season not talking about the Florida Panthers.
okay. Well, they're going to be a conversation when we get to our season premiere. But let's go back
Yeah.
to Anaheim and what this does is $18 million per for him. When you're looking down the road here in the next year, Makar needs to be resigned. Celebrini needs to be resigned. Bedard needs to be signed. Werenski's only got 2 years left on his contract, needs to be resigned. How much longer is he going to be the highest paid player in the NHL? My guess isn't very long because Makar is eligible now to get extended. And
Oh, and
Colorado,
his number is going to start with a two.
Calgary, yeah, well, the max is just over 20 million at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why his number is going to start with a two.
Yeah,
Now, I'm sure
so
McKinnon is like very much the hey, we all take one for the team kind of like Connor McDavid and quite frankly the entire Montreal roster. But um, I don't see Makar taking. He's by a couple of notches the best defenseman of his
Oh, no
generation,
question, no question. Well,
and he stirs the drink in that town
well,
as
and
as
that's
it showed
obvious
in the
from what happened in the
playoffs.
playoffs, right? And I think that
Yeah,
goes back to the conversation we had. I don't know if it was last week or the week before when we talked about the rising salary cap, and you could talk about and look at the teams across the league now. Most teams spend to the cap. As this
right.
cap rises, there's going to be less and less teams that spend to the cap and are actually going to have a budget. The Carolina Hurricanes this year did not max out the salary cap, and they won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And they did not have a player over $10 million per. So, there's a lot to be said for spreading your money around, not overloading your top end. Again, not to, we talk a lot about the Leafs and whatnot, but we've had this conversation about the Leafs. Every year they seem to turn over the bottom six, and they were paying at the time the core four way too much money. And we weren't able to have a really good, structured, balanced team across the four lines, the three sets of D, and the goaltenders, and that cost us.
Mhm.
This is going to catch up with with Anaheim really quickly. When you've got
But it already has.
right,
Well, for all intents and purposes, they're going to have a really tough time after having signed Minchikov. They're going to have a tough time signing Gauthier. Where are they going to find the money? They're going to have to
yep.
lose money somewhere else on the roster. And it's certainly not going to be on the back end because they don't have any money invested in their defense right now. And so, uh,
Well, they got
and,
one.
and
They got
yeah,
one.
there's one. They got Jackson Lacombe. But
Yep.
but other than that, they're really struggling to fill out their roster, and they've got to sign their 41 goal scorer, which they traded away Jamie Drysdale and all sorts of other stuff for. I mean, they're really under the gun. I don't know. Some GM or some executive at another team described Verbeek's mistake here as a fireable offense. Whether or not it is or it isn't, they're
Right.
in trouble.
They're in trouble.
They're in trouble. And when you've got two people on your team making, if
30 plus.
let's say they sign Gauthier at 15 at some point, two forwards on your team making $33 million. I mean, that makes the situation for the last bunch of years in Edmonton look like child's play in
Right.
comparison.
Right.
Now, granted, the salary cap is higher and it's going to get even higher than that, but that's a lot of money tied up
Yeah.
into just two guys out of a
Yeah.
roster that you've got to fill out.
No
So,
question. No question. And as we just said too, how is that going to be the ripple effect going forward for teams like Colorado? And they seemingly don't mind going to the cap room.
but
Chicago's
they're
going to have
also
to
going to
pay
have to
Bedard.
sell
San Jose is going to have to sign um, um, um,
Celebrini. Well,
Celebrini, and you got
in a
Fantilli
couple
out
of
there
years,
too for Columbus, who's
yeah,
now going, hold on a second. I'm I'm a restricted free agent. Where's my payday?
yeah.
Right?
Well, by the
So
way, in 2 years, you've got San Jose. You're going to be past your Celebrini problem, but you're going to be walking into your Will Smith, your
yeah.
Michael Misa problems. Like, you better lock these guys up as
Right.
early, as cheaply as possible.
Well,
And this is the opportune time to talk about what Montreal has done.
no question.
To me, like, yes, they did not sign a top six forward, a top six center, a 2C at like, or trade for one.
Yet.
Obviously the prices were, yeah, but the prices were nuts at the deadline, at the draft, and so Hughes didn't make any dumb moves. But what he did do was sign Demidov for 8 years at $9.25 million a year. So they've
Brilliant
got
move.
their entire roster is hooked up, their core anyway. Their entire core is hooked up through the early 30s. Not a single one of them is making over 10 million bucks.
Fantastic.
It's absolutely like the flexibility that they're going to have to bring in big fish.
Right.
Um,
Well, they still got to pay Dobish too. They've got to
they
re-sign
signed him.
Dobish. Did
They
they
signed
sign him?
him.
Right.
Yeah, he's
Right.
five and
Sorry, they did.
something a
Yeah, they
year.
did. Sorry, my apologies. I thought they
Yeah,
hadn't signed him yet.
he a pretty good contract.
Yeah.
Decent money, but not overly long. They didn't have to
Right.
sign like do an 8-year deal or anything
Right.
like that.
Right.
Because I
No.
figured they probably figure Fowler is going to be ready in a couple of
Right.
years, and then
Right.
one
So
A, one B.
but it's great. Like you've said it, like Montreal has figured out a way to keep their core signed long term and at fiscally responsible numbers. And Montreal is one of those teams can spend to the limit, right? So
Yeah.
there's not a problem for them, but they're doing it smart and they're going to have to look at they were close this year in terms of getting to as far as they did and losing to the eventual Stanley Cup champions. So they're close. And as to your point, they need to go find a 2C. They need to go find maybe one more defenseman. They're set in goal. They're set in their top six. Other than their centerman, they need a 2C, which isn't going to be easy to find. But as the season goes along, once we get to Christmas, once you get to Thanksgiving, the trade deadline, there's going to be two or three opportunities to potentially pluck somebody out, make a trade, or do something in order to fill
Yeah.
that gap as you go in this reason. You don't need a new do a knee-jerk reaction and pay somebody too much or make a stupid trade. Now you can wait to see how the season plays out and how teams sort of play and things happen or don't happen with certain players or whatnot. And there's
Right.
somebody's going to become available, right?
Right.
So
So it was an interesting, it highlights how smart it was for the Canadians and other teams to sort of, before that entry level contract is done, you find a way to sign these guys long
long
term.
term, it's crazy.
It's a risk. You never
Yep.
know if they're going to develop the way you think they do. But if you have the faith and you show the faith in them,
Yep.
by all means, do it.
Yep.
By all
And
means, do it.
who knows with injuries and stuff like that, but at this point, it looks great on paper. And then you can look to teams like, again, the salary cap issues are having ripple effects because now you've got guys like, let's skip over to Columbus. Guys want out, team's not performing. They're not a team that's probably going to be able to spend to the cap. And you got your star players that want out. Now, there's been a bit of a 360-degree turn with Werenski, but I kind of feel like that's a bit of a red herring. Like, I think
Yeah.
there's a bit of a save face here going on with Werenski, and they looked each other in the face, and went, "Hold on a second, I can't get what I want for you. The teams that you want to go for aren't putting up the offers that I need. The ones that did, you don't want to go there. You got to save face here. You got to be walking back into this change room. We talked about this last week. How do these guys who have asked for trades and don't get traded now walk back into their change room in September, October, and face their teammates? I think Zach Werenski has done at least a bit of saving face to be able to go back there and say, hey, look, I talked it over with my family. We've worked it out with management. I'm committed to this team. I think it's a bunch of BS. I think he's still looking out. And if a trade comes, it might not happen this summer, likely won't happen this summer. It will likely happen in December when they're out of the race or the trade deadline. He'll go, they'll get maximum value for him at that point.
Hmm.
It's crazy. Then you sort of look at Dylan Larkin and Detroit Red Wings, and it's a mess. That's a complete drama, bad drama going on over there with him
Yeah,
and Yzerman.
there's a lot of ego involved in this one. I think, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording. It's maybe 50-50 that he's traded before the season starts. But what's 100% is at the beginning of the season, at training camp, he's not the captain of the Detroit
Oh,
Red
it can't
Wings
be. You
anymore.
can't be. You again. This is just what we just talked about. Is how does Dylan Larkin walk back into that change room as the captain of the team? Has clearly said this ain't working. I want out. He's given Yzerman three teams. He's given him
But yeah,
Florida,
these are great.
Minnesota, and Vegas. All three of those teams are going, oh yeah, we'd love to have you, but we know that we don't have to give too much to get you, so we're not going to. And Eisman's going, no, 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 no. From you, Florida, I want Lundell, and we know that ain't happening. And unless Lundell's name's in it, you can't have Larkin. So you can
Right.
forget Florida's not happening. Then you look at Minnesota, and he said, okay, great. Yeah, I'll trade you to Minnesota, but I want Boldy back. And that ain't happening. There's no way Minnesota's giving up on Boldy, right?
Right.
I don't know who he's asking for from Vegas. So apparently there's been back and forth between Larkin's people and Yzerman, and he hasn't been willing to add more teams to the list. And Yzerman's going, fine, then you're coming back here next year.
Yeah.
Apparently, the last couple of days, he's added one more team,
Dallas.
Dallas,
Yeah.
right? And
Like,
again, could you make this more difficult? Like, if you really want out, expand your list because guess what? Guess who's going to ask for from Dallas? He's going to ask for Robertson. And guess what? Robertson ain't signing with Detroit.
No. Well,
So
I mean, I guess the other question is if you don't, let's just say you're starting to zoom in on a deal with Robertson, and you want to bring in Larkin in his 7.5 or whatever it is $1 million salary, um, which is he's on a bargain contract. There's no question
no,
about it for
but
who he is.
Robertson's not a
But you
bargain contract. He's going to want
but
15.
Robertson's not a bargain contract. It's going to take up. So who? Are you, where's the $7-8 million you're moving out to bring Larkin in?
Right.
Like you'd have to make that with two or three guys and bring up AHLers or whatever. And
Right.
I don't see a team that's trying to win a Stanley Cup championship doing that.
Right. Like we talked about it, maybe the right fit for Larkin is Montreal. There's just no way he wants to stay in. He doesn't want to go to Canada.
He doesn't
You
want to
know,
go to Canada. The Canadians don't want to give up
and they don't want to
what.
give up what's going to need because who's going to ask for
Yeah,
the Russian
yeah.
or Haig?
They'll ask for Hage, Zorowski, and probably
Right,
Reinbacher as
right.
well.
And it's not going to happen. So,
Yeah.
again, and then, worse for Larkin is again, he's been way more adamant. At least again, Rensky has saved faced a little bit here. Larkin has done none of that. He's
Yeah.
dug his heels in. And as the captain of that team, you walk back in that change room, everybody's gonna like just hate
No,
you,
no.
resent you.
Moritz Seider is the captain of that team
Yeah,
now.
like you're right. They're going to strip him of the C before the season. There's no question. If he walks back in that change room, he's stripped of the C. So it's a little crazy. And then you flip and you through more of these situations going on. Hellebuck
Hmm.
is not quite the same level. He said, I'd take a change of pace if I could get it. Apparently this week he is being fairly vocal with management saying, hey, look, I'd accept the trade to Buffalo. I'm happy to go to Buffalo. They just can't seem to work out. Everybody thought they'd work out a trade before the draft, and Buffalo would take Winnipeg's top five selection. Didn't happen. Still could happen. We'll see. But Hellebuck on that team could look pretty good. Could make them,
The question
improve.
is,
You put a all-star goaltender on that team. It's a pretty good
well, it's an
team.
all. You're adding an all-star goaltender. You're also subtracting a 30-goal scorer in Alex Tuch. Like they've
Yep.
definitely taken a bit of a step back, but they've built for the future, right?
Yep.
They've also replaced Bowen Byram with Owen Zellweger, which is or Oren Zellweger, which is not a fair trade,
No.
not an even trade. But I think there's something to be said for making that move. The question is if you're in a win now mode. And by the way, I'm not talking just about Buffalo. I'm talking about Winnipeg. If Winnipeg
Mhm.
is not willing to take futures for Hellebuck, they want to make a hockey trade. Who are you giving up?
Right. Well, it's not just that with Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg has a much bigger problem at stake here. Because if Hellebuck walks out of town and they don't
Right.
replace him with a solid goaltending and they have another bad season there, you've got four or five other players that just sign long term with all no trade clauses. Connor, um, everybody's going to go, hold on a second.
Yeah.
I want out. Like I don't want to be here if we're not going to be a winning franchise. You call last year a little bit of a blip for Winnipeg because the season before they were the President's Trophy winner. Um, and so maybe last year was a bit of a blip and they can get back there if they can make Hellebuck happy and they can improve the roster a little bit and get that 2C that they needed. Not that that's easy. We all know that there's not a 2C out there.
Yeah.
But they have a bigger problem at hand because if the cards start to fall on them and Hellebuck goes and they have a bad season, by Christmas, by the trade deadline, there's four or five stars in that team. They're all going to say, I want out of here too. Get me out of here.
Yeah.
And that's the slippery slope that Winnipeg can't go down. That franchise is it's a great franchise in terms of Canada and the city wraps its arms around it. But we've seen what happens in Winnipeg when they're not so good. The team and the fan base, it's a small fan base to begin with.
Yeah.
And
It becomes harder and harder to fill the
yeah,
building when they're not
yeah.
good.
And they're another
But
team that
and the
aren't going to
funny
spend
thing
to the
is
cap.
like, well, the interesting thing is their three best players, other than Scheifele, who's, he's top four if he's not in the top three, but their three best players are all American.
Yeah.
Hellebuck, Morrissey, and Connor are all Americans and all like playing in Winnipeg.
Morrissey's a Canadian.
Morrissey, is he?
Yeah, Morrissey's a Canadian.
Oh God, he's
He was
he's
he
my
was the injured
he's my.
defenseman on Team Canada, was he?
Oh, that's right. He's my new Ekblad.
Yeah,
He's my the
he's
Swede, the big
Swede.
Swede Ekblad.
He's
Josh
a
Morrissey is
Canadian.
Swedish.
But you're right.
Let's make sure this one doesn't go on the
Their big
clips.
star forwards, other than are all Americans, and they're
Yeah,
all going to want out,
yeah,
right? And they're all going to want to follow the trend of going. And then guess what? They're going to name four teams that at the time, whenever they announced that, was going to be the top four teams in the league because that's where they're
yeah.
going to go and go and win.
All
But
right.
but I think that's a bigger problem for Winnipeg. So, but there's so much movement that's happened this year or this July 1st is the one that I sort of want to talk about on top of all of this before we get to maybe the leases. As much as we banged on Stan Bowman, I think he actually had a great free agents market and offseason to this point.
He's done all right.
Getting rid of Darnell Nurse and his contract and not retaining an ounce of that salary has all of a gun from them having cap issues to them having a surplus and having a little bit of room to go and sign somebody and see how the season plays out and potentially maybe make a
Make a
move or two
trade.
that could help them during the season. But they got rid of Nurse, gave away nobody. They got a
Well,
defenseman
they've
in
got to.
return.
So
I'm
they
not going
have
to try
to.
and pronounce his name, so don't even ask me.
I won't.
Don't
I
even
won't.
ask
But
me.
they have to. But remember, they got to keep some salary cap in the bag.
But they're
And
going to. I don't think they're going to spend
but
it
they
this
need to
summer.
do that because Babcock's going to run at least two guys out of town that they're going to have to
Yeah, no kidding.
replace.
But they quite smartly getting rid of Nurse. They got a young defenseman in return from Anaheim,
Yeah,
not from Anaheim, from San
from
Jose.
San Jose, they signed Ryan Shea away from
Ryan Shea
Pittsburgh.
away from Pittsburgh. They re-signed Murphy, re-signed Dickinson, and then they went. You can say whether they've improved. Look at their team and their goaltending is better than it was at the season ends. They obviously got Bo Levi from Buffalo, and they went and signed Freddie Anderson to a one-year contract.
Devin
So
Levi,
they're Devin
Devon
Levi.
Levi.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Devin Levi. So they're definitely better than they were at the end of last season.
yeah.
Coaching aside, the whole situation going on there. Um, but the interesting piece is going to be now that they have cap space, how are they going
Hmm.
to use that cap space between now and the end of the next season to set themselves up for success, not just in the season, but to the run of the Stanley Cup? Because as we know in the West, the gauntlet now is Minnesota, Dallas, Colorado,
Yeah,
and that's not an easy gauntlet to run. And by the way, San Jose is going to look really good this year, if not next year, the year
yeah.
after. They're going to be tough, and they're coming. So, but you got to hand it to Stan Bowman. He did improve the team, and he proved their situation when it comes to the cap.
I think he improved the situation more than he improved the team. I think their goalie situation is still a bit of
Yeah,
a show me
yeah,
kind of situation because Freddie's another year older. Levi has not proven anything so far.
right.
So it's still a bit of an unknown. But the Babcock thing is going to be an interesting situation. We'll see how Zach Hyman can prep the room in advance for the
Yep,
horrors to come. But
yep,
yeah, they're going to be a very interesting team. They're
yep.
definitely going to be a very interesting team. Uh, but the other team that made, I think, 67 players out, 67 players in are the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Jesus. Well, look at. I think
Um,
that you say what you want to say, and look at. I was a naysayer with their offseason management moves. But say what you want, he has spared no time in terms of remaking this team over. Are they done yet? No. Is this team, as it's currently structured, going to win them the Stanley Cup? No. Are they better than they were at the end of last season? Yes. I think it's sort of the same situation we have in Edmonton. It's going to be a city to show me. But again, as we said earlier on, he has completely remade the bottom six, completely remade the bottom six teams. With the additions of Nick Paul, Sissons, McEwen, Darlene, Booger, um, Roslovic. Was he going to play on the top line because he's got a relationship with Matthews, or is he going to fit into the second or the third line? Right? Where do they slot some of these guys in? They brought in way more guys than they probably needed. So it's going to be interesting to see who sort of filters down to their minor system, who they use and package up for potential trade. They've improved their goaltending to some degree. Bobrovsky's a bit of a show me. He didn't have a great season last year, but just name alone and career wise, he's better
Yeah, but
off.
he's like 84 years old. I mean,
Yeah, but he's still better
goalies
off.
don't tend to age that
Yeah,
well
but
into
he's
their
also healthy. He can stay healthy, and if he can give you 40 to 45 games, and you can get 30 out of
stars.
Stolhars, and then you give the young rookie and the minors 10 to 15 games at some point, they're probably going to need all three of them during the season because he can go back up and down without any waivers. I think you're better off. Definitely more grit and size and skill in the bottom six than they had before. Guys like Nick Paul and Sissons and Roslovic, if he fits into the bottom six, those are more talented players than what they had in the bottom six, right? They have more
To a
potential
degree.
to be secondary scoring than Nick Robertson. And by the way, I've had three dance parties since he's been traded. I couldn't wait for him to be gone. He's gone. Thank you very much. For that alone, I'm going to thank the Maple Leafs because we're going to be
And
thankful they don't have him anymore.
our listeners will thank the Maple Leafs so they don't have to hear you bitch about them
Bitch,
anymore.
but they're better off now than they were last season. The big question mark is, can they pull off what Edmonton did with Darnell Nurse and not retain any salary? Can they do the same with Riley? And where are the potential landing spots for Riley? Because if he's not put in the top two pairings, he's still a good offensive defenseman.
Yeah,
He's still relatively inexpensive at $6.5 to $7.5 million a season. Anaheim has a need.
right.
A lot of people thought San Jose was going to be in need, and they were in there. Probably they were thinking Riley or Darnell Nurse. They got Nurse and got the guy they wanted. But Riley, there's still a place for him, and they got to get rid of him. They can't bring him back next season because
Right.
we're right now over the cap.
They've upgraded their defense. They're definitely more mobile defense core than they were last year.
Yeah, and look at the health of Tanev is going to make a huge difference to this defense core.
Well, that's their defensive conscience, right?
Right.
Like they don't have really a shutdown guy beyond Tanev at
Right.
this point. So they really need him.
Well, I also think that's a good point in terms of the defensive side of the game. I think with the additions of guys like Nick Paul and Bluger and Sissons, they're defensively responsible
It better be
and
because
penalty
Paul didn't
killing
score at
guys,
all
right? Well,
last year.
they're penalty killing guys too.
Yeah.
I don't think under new coaching that they're going to ask Matthews to kill penalties anymore. That was just taxing him too much, and you don't want him out there. Maybe you put him out there for the last 10, 15, 20 seconds of a penalty kill to if something happens and you're go on the offense as somebody's coming out, but you're not going to
Yeah.
ask him to do a minute and a half of penalty killing next year. I think you've brought in some guys that can be responsible and fill in those into those slots and whatnot. So
Agree.
I
Well,
think that
the other thing you have to hope for is, they let Derek Lalonde go, who the Canadians hired. And how much responsibility does his coaching bear for the
I think a lot of it.
successful penalty kill that the Leafs have had over the last few
But they weren't
years?
very successful last year. They had
They
a
weren't
terrible
last year,
penalty kill last year.
but that was the strength of their game in seasons
Part of
prior
that
to
was
that.
goaltending because the season before last, they got strong goaltending and they were good.
Maybe.
Like the last 2 years, they've had dismal puck possession and offensive zone time. They've spent way too much time in their own zone. I think this
Yeah.
team now, as you said, more mobile defense, someone to carry the puck out. Um, and the addition of Radish, you're going to spend a little bit less time, hopefully, in your own end and more time in the offensive zone and hopefully that helps overall. And the other acquisition that they made in the offseason is bringing in their arch rival Daniel Averson as an assistant coach out of Ottawa, which was interesting. So, and he's going to handle the power play apparently. So it'll be a different philosophy, and you got to wonder how much Matt Sundin had in that, right? Because they're buddies, Swedish
Yeah.
buddies. So, it's a completely different looking team than it was last year,
So
and we'll
what's
see.
your based on how the roster is structured now? Like, prior to any potential Riley trade and any other moves. Do you think they're a playoff team?
I think they're a wild card team right now.
You think they're a wild
I
card
don't think
team?
they're top three in the East because obviously you got to put Florida, Montreal, and Tampa Bay currently up there.
But you think
So
they'll
I
be
think they're
better
a
than
wild card
Boston?
team. I think they're better. I don't think Boston's done enough. The New York Islanders have done nothing. The
Yeah.
Rangers are a mess. Philadelphia, if they are probably the other wild card team, maybe right now. Washington's going to be in the top three, maybe in their team.
Washington will be in the top three
Washington
of
will
their
be up
division.
there with their additions. So, I think they're a wild card team. They're not going to win the East. They're not going to come out of the East. But I don't think they're done yet. I think Riley will go. We'll see what they get back from Riley. There's Shane right now is sitting out there. Seattle is saying they're going to move on from him. Do I think
How
he's
great would it be if the Canadians traded for Shane Wright after
after
passing on
passing him
him?
up?
They
Look at
they drafted Slavkovsky
look at
instead,
their time.
and
That's now turned out to be the right move, right?
right.
So Shane Wright hasn't developed quite the way everybody hoped he would be, but he's still a reliable two-way player. He's had
Hmm.
decent numbers, not great numbers. But it'll be interesting to see where he lands, right?
Yeah, his
And
advanced numbers are good. It's just his
right,
production is bad.
right, and in the right situation, can he help a team in the
Yeah.
right way, right?
I think the Canadians could shelter his minutes too a little
Right.
bit until he
Could
develops.
he end up in Edmonton? Help them with some depth down the middle.
Yeah.
That's another place that he could end up being in. Being a Canadian boy, he's not going to have a problem going to a Canadian team, right? So we'll see. The other thing that sort of was interesting, and I know we won't spend too much time here because there's a few other things to talk about. What confused me, because I don't think the Lightning have gotten all that much better from what they
No,
were last year.
no.
And the confusing piece for me is, look, it's helped the Leafs to some degree, is they let Radish go because at 30 years old, they didn't want to pay him for 8 years at 8.5 million, which I understood at the time.
Radish with one Norris caliber season.
Yeah, and two good seasons. The last two seasons have been good, but
Yeah.
you're right. Last year was he really shone while Victor Hedman was injured and he stepped up, right? So you
Yeah.
hope that he can continue that. Can he continue that for 8 years? It's unlikely. But then they turn, and he's a right shot defenseman, which don't grow on trees as well. Everybody's looking for a right shot defenseman that has a hard shot and can run your power play. So they turn around and sign a 36-year-old John Carlson for $8.5 million for 2 years at 36. So that to me was a bit confusing. You've got an experienced defenseman in Carlson, probably not nowhere near as slight a foot as Radish, more of a defensive liability than Radish. Offensive, no question. Great on the power play, can run your power play. He had a
Hmm.
great season and finished off great with Anaheim. But at 36, I take Radish all day. With a
So
rising salary cap, I'm taking Radish all day.
I don't disagree. I think that this is probably the result of one of two things happening. The first is um, Brisebois sees that the window is not as wide open as it used to be, and there are a lot of up and coming teams. And committing an 8-year deal or a 7-year deal or whatever to a 31-year-old defenseman, even in a rising cap world, when the last 4 years of that deal are likely going to be not cup competitive. They'll be competitive, but not
Yeah.
cup
Well, in
competitive.
that time, Victor Hedman will have retired.
Yeah. And so you have to ask yourself, do you want to be paying a Radish? Have a contract that's a bit of an albatross at that stage. Would you rather have John Carlson at 36 for a reasonably similar performance for a little bit less money, but a lot more flexibility in 2 years because the contract is
Maybe,
over?
maybe.
That's option number one.
Yep.
Option number two is they had something completely different in mind and they weren't
Well,
able to pull it off. And this was plan B.
I think that's probably right now one of the more likely situations because I think both the Leafs and Tampa were the two top picks for Zach Werenski where he wanted to go. He had narrowed it
Yeah.
down to saying, "Look, those are my first two picks. If I can go to Toronto or go to Tampa Bay, that's where I want to go."
Yeah.
And I'm sure, if rumors hold true, the Leafs were unwilling to let go of Nyes. They were trying to create a package of non-nice players, and likely Cowan was in that, and probably a few draft choices that they got this year, and a few other things on the list.
Yeah.
And I don't know what when Tampa Bay was dangling, but it wasn't enough for Columbus to go, we're not trading our Norris Trophy defenseman for that package. Unless you give me Nyes, um, we're not taking him. And now, seemingly, he's staying there, and he's likely going to start the season in Columbus. And you're right. I think for Tampa Bay, they went, okay, we didn't get him. We let Radish go. We need to fill that hole.
Yeah.
John Carlson was the best option and short-term option, to your point of giving them flexibility in a couple of years. But to me, it was still a little questionable in all of that.
Yeah.
The last couple of things to talk about, and before we go, and I also want to say, okay, who do you think won and lost thus far in the free agency world? Is the drama around Robertson is still going on. He has now filed papers for arbitration. It'll be
Hmm.
interesting to see what happens. The interesting piece about that, if people don't know, is that if they end up going to arbitration with him, and the arbitrator rules and that deal is accepted
They
or
can't trade him.
taken, well, they can trade him still. But here's the bigger thing: is he has a no trade clause. Does that? I'm not sure what happens with that no trade clause, but is that he becomes an unrestricted free agent next year, right? So
Right.
then he holds all the cards of going, yeah, you can trade me, but I'm going to tell that team I'm not sticking there. If you send me somewhere I don't want to go, I'm telling them I'm leaving,
Yeah.
right?
It's an
So
effective no trade
he all
clause.
yeah he all of a sudden has all the cards. He might get his 15 million that he wanted, but for one season, and then he might bolt. So it's probably in their best interest to figure this out before that gets decided. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
I
Yeah.
have a sneaking suspicion that, intelligently or not, before the end of this season, Jason Robertson will be a New York Ranger.
You think so?
It's a guess. It's a
I don't
complete
see.
guess. It's just
Would
the
you want to go
it's
if
the
you're Nick
con
Ro if you're not Nick Robertson, call him
Jason
Jason
Robertson.
Robertson, do you want to go to New York right now? That dumpster fire that is New York right now. Because
I
it's a dumpster
think
fire.
I think the lights of Broadway just attract people, even if it's
Yeah.
not.
I don't know. I think that right now, if I'm an elite player right now in the league and I look to see what Drury has done, giving away Crochet for basically peanuts,
Yeah.
most players are saying they don't want to even play for Drury. Um, I'm not sure I want to go there. If I'm Jason Robertson, I look at that and go, there's no hope in hell they got to change because he obviously wants to win. He's turned down lots of money to go in a lot of places because he wants
Yeah.
to win, and he ideally wants to stay in Dallas, which I respect. But I don't think you go to New York Rangers. I think
Yeah.
if you're Jason Robertson's, why would you want to waste the next 3 or 4 years of your life going to New York? Because they ain't going anywhere with this
Because
management
he'll
team and
because
this
he'll
zero
because
philosophy on.
because Drury will pay him 18 million bucks.
Yeah, but he's turned down 18 million from Seattle.
Yeah. Well, Seattle's not New York.
No, but they're the same when it comes to who's going to make the playoffs next year and who ain't.
Probably. Probably.
So, with all that said and done, before we go into the last topic, which we'll get to,
Okay.
who do you think so far has had the best and the worst free agent season so far, or off
Okay.
season so far?
Okay. Well, the best is the team that shall not be named. And like, because I said I didn't want to talk about them in the last episode of the season. But yeah,
For those who are listening and don't understand what he's talking about, it's the Florida Panthers.
yeah. So the Florida Panthers, as always, did a pretty amazing job. But I do think under the circumstances and what they've set themselves up for the future, um, I'd say it's a tie between, and it's not just free agency. I'm logging in the draft day trades and the draft and free agency altogether. I, I would say it's a tie between Buffalo and San Jose. And both of them are kind of longer term plays because
Yep.
Buffalo ended up with that great draft pick. Um, but uh, San Jose draft day plus getting Nurse, I think they
Well, if
are,
Nurse can play back to a level that he's capable of
yeah,
and be sheltered a little bit, and now you pair him, if you pair him with Truba, but that team, we've said it for the last 6 to 8 months,
They're going to be a
It's
problem.
just going to be fantastic. I'm going to be staying up to watch a lot of San Jose Shark games next year because they're
Yeah.
going to be so fun to watch.
Yeah.
And Celebrini is just on fire. He's just become the International Player of the Year. There's no question getting Stenberg at number two and then getting Verhoff on the point. He might not
Yeah.
play next year. He might end up back in college, but the next 2 or 3 years, if they can do what you've said in terms of sign their youngsters for decent contracts long term, this team is going to win two, three Stanley Cups in the next 10 years. It's just fantastic.
Yeah.
What Greer has done with that team, and you're right, they're one of the teams. The other one that gets an honorable mention for me is Washington. And again, I would caveat that with saying if Tuck can have the year that he's capable of having, if Kyrou can turn back the clock a little bit in a couple of years and get some of that enthusiasm back in the game after playing the last couple of years in St. Louis and that.
Yeah. The
Um,
St. Louis
it,
Blues fans definitely let us have it, or let me have it
Yeah, yeah,
in the comment section of our
they didn't like
videos.
you. Didn't like
They
your
didn't.
comments too much of calling him a burner.
Well, they
Um,
didn't. They just didn't like me saying anything flattering about the guy at all. So
yeah,
the Blues fans don't have. They did not let the door hit Kyrie's ass on the way
no,
out.
no,
That's
they
for
weren't big
sure.
fans of Cairo, but I think Washington could be an interesting team next year. If
Yeah.
they can continue to develop and move some of the young guys they brought in last year, and they get the goaltending again. Who knows what you're going to get out of Ovechkin, but you're going to get 15 to 20 power play goals alone out of them
Yeah. Well,
with
look,
that
the one thing
lineup.
you can
And
say
they're going to be
about them,
big. They're going to be big
I was just going to say, the
and
one thing you can say about them is they're going to be huge.
yeah. So they're going to be the only team potentially could handle from a size perspective the Panthers. And I
Yeah.
still say the biggest flaw, like there's no question that the Panthers had a great offseason. There's two questions, maybe three. We talked one of them last week. Three question marks I have for the Panthers. Their goaltending has to hold up. Markstrom has not proven he can do anything in the playoffs, and Schmidt
Hmm.
didn't have a
Same.
great season. So goaltending has to hold up because they're going to be because the other point is they're going to spend a lot of time in the penalty box and they're going to be on the PK a lot, and their goaltending and their defense is going to have to hold up too.
Yeah.
The third piece of that is injuries. If that team doesn't stay healthy with the salary structure they've got now, their depth players beyond their starters aren't there anymore. They've
Hmm.
now had to trade them away, right? So if they run into injury problems this year, they could have problems,
Yeah.
right? And
I'm
and
not going to
that's
comment on any of that because I refuse to talk about the Panthers, but
exactly
I'll let you handle that.
the last thing to talk about. And our friend Greg has not responded to our texts. Is the Carolina Hurricanes owner Tom
Hmm.
Dundon? If no one has been paying attention, owner Tom Dundon, who gets the say on whose names go on the cup, there's a must. There's a rule to this. There's two rules. Every player that played in the playoffs name has to go on the cup. That's a rule.
Hmm. Yep.
Beyond that, it's up to the owner to decide whose names goes on the cup. However, there is they say it's unwritten rule, but they say that since, and I'll talk about it in a second, it happened once before, there is a written rule about this, is that the people's names that go on the Stanley Cup have to be associated with the team in a working fashion. And
Right.
for those out there that haven't heard, Tom Dundon, owner of the Carolina Hurricanes, put his name on the cup, rightfully so. His wife's name on the cup, and all five of his children. And one of his children are 7 years old. So if you're telling me that kid is working for the team,
Probably lives in Dallas
it's
too.
a shameful misuse of names on the cup. Just terrible because the ripple effect to that is one player who played 35 games with them, didn't play in the playoffs, I think was moved, didn't get put on the cup. And traditionally, someone that's played that much, even if it was just the regular season, does get put on the cup.
You have to petition a league.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
41 games and more, you're on the cup, and
I
then
think he
anything under
played
that,
38. I think he played
yeah,
38. And I forget the guy's name, but it doesn't matter. The one that's the biggest
nice one.
travesty is their equipment manager who's been with the team since 1975 when they were the Hartford Whalers. Didn't get his name on the cup because Tom Dunnan put his five children on the cup. It's a travesty for me, and I've been apoplectic about this since it's happened. And apparently, as you dig around, there's been one other occasion where this happened, where apparently the rule then got written in that they had to work for the team. Is that the Illich family did this in their last time they won the cup? He put his 7 children on the cup.
Oh, Jesus. Well,
So
didn't Peter Pocklington put his father on the cup and then
yes,
they X'd it
yes,
out or
yes,
something?
they X'd it out. But yeah, the last time this happened was the Illiches, and he put 7 of his children on this thing. And to me, that's just wrong. It's just wrong. Now, back
I
then,
agree
when
with you.
Detroit did it, the size of the uh, help and the team management wasn't as big as it was now. So you could probably manage to get a few of those names on there.
Right.
Today, with equipment manager, video, blah, blah, go down the list of, assistant coaches, all that kind of stuff. There's way more active members that should be on the team that aren't players that
Yeah.
put their heart and soul into this. And a guy who's equipment manager, these guys go through hell. On the road, they're up. They're first
Did
guys in
he
the
get his
room, the last
name?
guy's out.
Did he
Yes,
get his name on the cup in '05 or
yes,
whatever it was when they
yes.
last
So
won
his
it?
name's
Okay.
on it, but to me,
Yeah.
that's no consolation. It's just disrespectful for a guy who's being put his heart and soul into the team for 50, 35, 40 years. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. But I've
Let's
become an
just
un-Tom
say,
Dundon fan and un-Hurricane fan because of this.
yeah, it kind of disappoints me because I was, sort of happy for the Carolina
Yeah.
Hurricanes, given their identity and everything. And this was a very big disappointment. However, much like I've sort of sworn for my mental health not to talk about the Florida Panthers in this episode before we take a break for the summer and not think about the Panthers at all, hopefully, or the Vegas Golden Knights for that matter. The other thing that I've decided to do for my mental health is not tilt at windmills over the BS behavior of billionaires.
Probably
They're
a very good philosophy.
billionaires going to do what billionaires going to do, and if it's
Yeah.
something, thankfully, is harmless in terms of societal cost, as putting his kids' names on the Stanley Cup. It sucks, but it is what it
What it
is.
is. Absolutely. Well, with that, hey, look, it's been a fun season. Can you believe this is the end of our second season? This is our 75th episode. So next season we will reach the 100 mark.
Wow.
So
We're going into syndication.
we're going into
To use an old
syndication. Yeah,
to use an
two
old
TV
TV
execs. We
term.
go right to syndication. I'm going to leave that to you and Ron to sell for us. But hey, it's been a fun season. The right team did win the Stanley Cup this year,
Yep.
as far as I'm concerned. The wrong team didn't. And it's been a great season. I look forward to next year and getting back at this in the fall. But until then, have a great rest of your summer, Ryan, and we'll see you in September.
Yeah, absolutely. And same to you, and same to all of our listeners, our loyal
Yes.
listeners who have been with us
Yeah.
from the beginning.
Absolutely. Thank you
And-
to everybody who's been listening all season long. And we have a few new ones this year. Our German friends. We have a lot more my hockey buddies listening. I know you got some family members listening. So appreciate it. It's been, we're doing this because you and I just having fun with it, but I'm glad there's people listening, and whether they're just listening with us on mute, who cares? They're
Yeah,
listening.
well, because we are that good looking. They just turn the sound off.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, we'll see you in September, Ryan, right here on the Aiming 5-Hole podcast. See you later.
Take it easy.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The open roars of fiery tune.